Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. We are continuing on today with Codominance by CurlyStar09, and today we are doing chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11, False Domesticity. Bakugou drove them home, making a stop on the way to get some fried chicken for them. The whole time they drove home, one of the CDs Eijirou gave them playing. Kirishima sang along to the songs he knew, full-hearted and as dramatically as was humanly possible to sing to children's songs. Bakugou couldn't hide his smile, joining for a couple of choruses as he wondered if he had lost his mind and how he was so goddamn lucky for this to be his life. So what if he wasn't dating the love of his life? They still lived together and had a wonderful, perfect son together. He could figure the rest out later. He just wanted to enjoy this moment, all the little moments, the ones that he will burn into his mind and try to remember every detail of. Take as many pictures and videos as possible to have evidence that it was all real. He had a mental clock counting down the years, months, days, weeks, hours, and minutes. He could keep this going. Before the tight feeling in his chest would become too much and he would have to tell Kirishima exactly what he wanted them to be. How he didn't want their relationship to be a show they put on for others. He wanted to run his fingers through silk-like red hair in the dark of their room because they should be sharing a room. To kiss Kirishima when no one was looking simply because he felt like it, or to kiss that shit-eating grin that made his brain spasm. There was a lot more Bakugou wanted, needed actually, but the moments they had like this in their little family were enough for now, helping him build up the courage he would need. "All right, we're here," Bakugou announced as he parked the car in their driveway. "You grab the food, I grab the kid." "Deal," Kirishima grinned, bumping his fists against each other before getting out of the car. "Come on, gremlin," Bakugou told Akio as he untied him from his car seat. Akio shook one of his toys at him, as if trying to show off, as he exclaimed at him. Bakugou picked up Akio and the diaper bag before closing the car door. Kirishima was waiting for him, holding their food in one hand and the house key in the other. Bakugou couldn't help the small twist in his stomach at the realization of how domestic the moment was. It was so mundane, but a month ago he would have never believed he would ever have these moments. If they were together, an actual family, Bakugou would have walked right over to Kirishima and kissed him, just for the fuck of it. But they weren't, and he couldn't do that. So instead, he walked over to Kirishima, keeping his eyes on Akio. "Open the door, Red." "On it," Kirishima told him with a grin as he led the way to the front door. It didn't take long for them to get settled, deciding to have dinner in the living room because it was easier to have Akio in the playpen while they ate. Kirishima put on one of those cheesy action movies they both liked, apologizing playfully and dramatically for it not being an all-night movie, earning himself a shove and an eye roll, but there was a smile on the blonde's face. Bakugou was the one to bring up the one thing that they were both keeping in the back of their mind as they ate. "Should we check social media now or later?" "Let's just do it now," Kirishima said with a sigh, reaching for his phone. "Group chats seem to be going crazy," Bakugou mumbled as he looked at the notifications on his phone. "Which one?" "All of them," Bakugou deadpanned. They had different chats for their self-proclaimed squad, their former class, and then a larger chat for pro heroes around their age, not counting the one for Bakugou's agency with all of his sidekicks and other heroes. "Oh," Kirishima said as he leaned back onto the sofa. "Well, that's going to be a lot of reading." "No fucking shit." "Cats, really?" Kirishima said in a warning tone, motioning over to Akio. "I'm trying, all right," Bakugou mumbled as he tapped away on his phone. "Just hate being the center of a media frenzy." "Yeah, I know," Kirishima told him, a hand patting Bakugou's back. Eri had been right. They seemed to be the main topic on the internet. Clips of the interview were circulating, The most popular by far was of Bakugou going off on Insecta. Her reaction was rapidly becoming a meme as far as Bakugou could tell. He should have blown her up, fucking talking about Kirishima like she had any right to even look at him. People really liked the fact that we held hands throughout the whole interview, Kirishima told him as he read an article. Guess that was a good move from us. Bakugou just nodded because that was what it was supposed to be, a move, and not him refusing to let go of the one person that had kept him grounded. Did you see what the idiots did? Bakugou chimed in, trying to change the subject. He turned his phone so Kirishima could see the picture Ashido had posted of her and Sero wearing their Baby Protection Squad shirts. The caption simply read, "No one will ever dare mess with Akio on the playground." Right under it was a picture of Kaminari wearing his Baby Protection Squad shirt and dark sunglasses. "We already look like bodyguards," his caption read. There was also a picture of Jiro and Momo wearing their shirts, while Shinso only posted a picture of the shirt without his face in it. Everyone from their UA class that seemed to have one of those fucking shirts had posted a picture of it or them in it. Deku had his on top of his hero costume, apparently having gotten his just after his patrol. Todoroki next to him holding up his shirt, looking a bit confused. Tetsu and Kendo posted their photos as well, the caption declaring Akio the little brother of the friend group. Uraraka had gone on a Twitter rampage, listing everything she wanted to get Akio, from toys to clothes, and having polls on whether she should get him a Crimson Riot or All Might outfit, the option for both winning by a landslide. The list went on and on as they continued scrolling. "Is there any pro that doesn't have one of those?" Bakugou grumbled. "I think it's sweet. Shows their support," Kirishima told him with a half smile. "Besides, it seems to be only heroes from our graduating year at UA, so it's not that bad. Also, look," Kirishima said as she showed Bakugou the comment section on a picture of Akio their publicists had posted. Akio is very popular, so it's good that people know that there are a lot of pros ready to protect him. Bakugou couldn't argue against that. They were going to need all the help in the world if they were going to continue having problems with the Hero Commission after all. "Fine, I'll allow it." Kirishima let out a laugh. "Thank you for your generosity, Your Highness." Bakugou rolled his eyes, shoving at Kirishima lightly. "Shut up." Time passes. Kirishima was supposed to be in control of his own emotions. He knew very well where he stood when it came to Bakugou. It was just very hard to remind himself where the line was when the whole world was talking about them being together and how in love they looked. They had done too good of a job during their interview, and now he had to live with the consequences. It was almost addicting to see all the screenshots and edits of them from the interview. In some, Kirishima couldn't help but wonder if he was imagining the fondness in Bakugou's eyes while he was looking at him. It had been a trick of the light, or his mind trying desperately to find something that wasn't there, something he so desperately wanted to be there. It was all just hopeful wishing, after all. Bakugou and Akio were asleep. He should be too, but he had been tossing and turning for hours before he decided to just give up. He had a lot on his mind. Not only were all eyes on them now, but he was supposed to go back to work in a few days. It was a matter of time before Bakugou had to go back to his agency as well. What were they going to do with Akio while they were at work? Kirishima had some more vacation days saved up, but he would feel guilty using them all at once. Fandom would probably not mind, but he needed to pull his weight. He was one of the most requested heroes at the agency. He couldn't leave everyone waiting for him. Then there was the fact that he had a couple of ongoing cases, and they still needed to find the rest of the villains that had kept Akio in such a horrible place. He needed to talk to Bakugou about it too. All of it. Maybe they should find a daycare that specializes in pro-hero kids. Was that even a thing? He needed to find that out. Bakugou probably knew, since he had his own agency at all. Kirishima went to find a piece of paper to start writing some things they had to do sooner rather than later. They had a lot to talk about in the morning. Time passes. Bakugou woke up to the smell of miso soup, which was odd, knowing Kirishima didn't like having soup for breakfast. Bakugou let out a groan as he stretched and headed to the kitchen. As soon as Akio saw him from his high chair, he let out a string of babbles as a greeting with a smile, making Kirishima turn to look at him as well with his own bright smile. "Good morning, cats," Kirishima said as he turned back to the eggs he was cooking. "Breakfast?" "Good morning, and yeah, thanks." Bakugou leaned down to kiss Akio on the top of his head before ruffling his hair, earning himself a squeal. "Why are you up so early, eh?" Kirishima shifted slightly before answering with a shrug. "Just got hungry, I guess." Bakugou raised an eyebrow. "Spit it out, dumb hair." It was Kirishima's turn to stare at Bakugou, fighting a smile. "Dumb hair?" Bakugou rolled his eyes. "Do you want me to do the no cursing thing or not?" The redhead let out a chuckle, turning around to face Bakugou as he talked. "All right, I appreciate the effort." "You better." I have to go back to work on Friday. Weekend shift to make up for the time I was away." Hand rubbing at the back of his neck. "I just can't help but think, what are we going to do when we both go back to work? Daycare? A nanny? Would he be safe? With all those villains still out there, we don't have a lot of options." "Hey, we have time to figure this out," Bakugou assured him, but suddenly hit with just how unprepared they were for everything coming their way. "I go back to work in, 4 days?" "I go back to work in 4 days?" "I still have some time off, and I can do the paperwork stuff for the agency from home," Bakugou assured him, "just till we have a plan." "And it's all right with you, missing more work?" "Yes, I'm sure," Bakugou told him with no hesitation. Perk of having his agency, after all, and it would be fun spending some time with the little gremlin, after all. "Okay, so we can start looking into childcare options?" "Yeah, sounds like a plan," Bakugou told him, earning himself a bright smile from Kirishima that made his heart skip a beat. Fuck, he needed to get himself together. "Do you think Aizawa would be down for nanny duty?" "I think he would tie us up and hang us up if we even think about asking," Bakugou chuckled. "Yeah, I think you're right." "Red, your eggs are burning," Bakugou said as a burning smell hit him. Kirishima's eyes turned wide before turning back around to look at his pan. "Oh, fuck, what the—" "Language," Bakugou grinned, earning himself a glare before Kirishima tried to salvage breakfast. "This is why I do the cooking," Bakugou explained to Akio, who stared at him with wide eyes. "Da!" Akio responded. Bakugou and Kirishima froze, turning to look at each other before looking at Akio once more. "I'm counting that as his first word," Kirishima said. "Yeah, that was it, right?" Bakugou broke out in a wide grin. "Told you our kid was a genius." "I never said he wasn't," Kirishima grinned. Bakugou immediately started to try to get Akio to say it again, telling him to say it twice for it to be dada. Kirishima couldn't stop smiling as he served what he had been able to save of their breakfast. They would figure it all out. They were a team, after all, and it was all they needed to be. And maybe something more. For now, Bakugou just needed a plan. Chapter 12. Back to work. Kirishima shuffled around his room, getting ready for work. He felt a bit guilty about leaving Bakugou with Akio for the whole day, and a bit like he would be missing out. They have been able to do a lot in the last few days. They had officially finished the nursery and had started a list of childcare options that they would look more into. After a long talk, they had decided to go with a daycare, thinking it would be beneficial for Akio to interact with other kids his age, even though he had met quite a few people since they had brought him home with them. He was still not as used to people as they would have liked. Also, according to Bakugou, spending time with other kids would help him learn faster and teach him social skills he needed. Bakugou already had a full spreadsheet with ratings and overall pros and cons of the list they were considering. That was later on, though. For about another week, Akio would be staying home with Bakugou as they had agreed. Kirishima was almost done getting ready, and a feeling of dread he had never felt about a day of work festered in his stomach. He didn't mind it, and it was a step towards where they could both work while being parents that Akio deserved. Just that he would need Bakugou to send him photos of Akio to get him through the day, more than likely. Kirishima finished getting dressed. His hero costume was at the agency, so he was wearing his street clothes to work. As he stepped out of his room, he found Bakugou in the living room watching the news with Akio on his lap. "Morning, cats," he said as he walked in with a smile. "Morning, Akio." Akio smiled, waving his arm as he reached out to Kirishima. "Da, da, da." "Hey, Bakugou said with a grin. "Ready for work?" "As I'll ever be," Kirishima said with a sigh. "Are you going on patrol today?" "Nah, probably going to get stuck doing paperwork all day. Maybe get to train the interns. I don't think they will let me back onto the field just yet." "Told you to join my agency. You could have done whatever you wanted if you had," Bakugou told him with a half smile. "That makes the boss sound like a pushover," Kirishima chuckled. "I'll show you a pushover," Bakugou huffed, but Kirishima could see the wide grin he was trying to hide. "I need to show up early to talk to Fat, so I'm heading out now." "All right, kick the ass of paperwork, I guess," Bakugou told him. "Language, but thanks." Kirishima smiled, walking over to him and leaning down to give Akio a kiss on the cheek. As he pulled away, he stopped a couple inches away from Bakugou's face, his breath catching as soon as their eyes met. Kirishima straightened himself quickly, clearing his throat, trying to hide the blush as he turned to leave. "Text if you need anything." "Bye," Kirishima called out as he made his way out of the house, making a quick stop in the kitchen to grab an apple on his way out. Once he was in his car, he could still feel his heart beating against his chest. He could have kissed his best friend right then and there. It would have been so easy, so simple, but he couldn't do that. He couldn't put that pressure on Bakugou out of nowhere. Not when they wouldn't be able to talk about it since he had to rush to work. Sooner or later, he would have to talk to Bakugou about his feelings. But now was not the moment. It just wasn't the right time. Time passes. Bakugou let out a shaky breath as soon as Kirishima was out the door, pushing aside the thought of pulling the redhead towards him in that split second when he leaned down to kiss Akio. How fucked up was it that he was jealous of his own child? "Let's get you some breakfast," he told Akio as he stood up, trying to push Kirishima out of his mind. Akio let out a giggle as Bakugou lifted him high over his head before holding him properly. "You get kisses, and I get mixed signals. Isn't that fun?" Bakugou grumbled before placing Akio on his high chair. "Okay, gremlin, time for breakfast," Bakugou declared as he started fixing a bottle for Akio, along with a bowl of baby cereal they had gotten for him since the kid needed to start eating actual food more often. Bakugou made a quick protein shake for himself, talking to Akio the whole time, getting a string of babbling and a couple of daz in return. The kid was starting to get good at conversation, and Bakugou couldn't be prouder. He was already a lot like Kirishima, keeping the conversation going for him most of the time. "What are we going to do today, Akio?" Bakugou asked as he finished drinking his protein shake. Akio let out a shriek as he hit his high chair's tray, looking at Bakugou with a big smile. "I know I have to clean up first, gremlin. I'm asking for after that," Bakugou told him as he moved Akio's chair closer to the sink so he could start washing dishes. We could go to the park, but I'm sure there are some fucking paparazzi there, Bakugou said. Akio babbled once more, his little fists lifting as if wanting attention. Yes, language, I know, Bakugou said with an eye roll, but he couldn't help but smile. You won't tell on me, will you? Some more lively, nonsensical monologue from Akio followed. Trying to blackmail me already? Bakugou continued talking to Akio as he cleaned up the kitchen, deciding to take a bath and give Akio one as well. It resulted in more water on the floor than he had expected, but they were both clean and dressed. Bakugou was counting that as a victory. No one else but them would know about it after all. It was getting close to noon when Bakugou started missing Kirishima. Akio had gone down for a nap, and the house was quiet for what felt like the first time in ages. Bakugou got on his laptop trying to get some work done while Akio was sleeping. He had to go over some of the administrative work for his agency, as well as trying to get through more files Deku had sent him. He had so much to do, but he couldn't stop his mind from wandering, always going back to red hair, bright smiles with shark-like teeth, and a laugh that made his days. He started wondering what Kirishima was going to have for lunch. Time passes. He wasn't exactly bored. There was a lot to do at the Hero Agency after all, and having been away for so long meant it would be a game of catching up on everything going on. The fact that everyone kept asking him about Bakugou and Akio made it hard not to miss being back at home with them. Fatgum had taken almost an hour of his time wanting to get to know more about Akio and to see every picture and video Kirishima had of him. He seems to be getting used to you two rather quickly, Fatgum commented with a smile, already knowing all the details of the situation. He was one of the two people in the agency that knew the truth of Akio's origin, the other being Tetsu. He really is. He is really attached to us. I'm a bit worried how he will handle being at daycare without us once Bakugou starts working, Kirishima told Fatgum as he scratched the back of his neck. I'm sure he will be fine, Fatgum assured him. We can talk more about this later on. I think I've kept you here long enough. Fat gave him a wide smile. After that, Kirishima had been dealing with paperwork for the most part, and it wasn't anything that he couldn't handle. It was just weird having to sit around in his hero costume since he had to be ready for action in case of an emergency call. He couldn't help but think he could have done all of this from his laptop back home. It was getting close to his lunch hour, and he was trying to think if he should try and get some noodles at a nearby shop or just get an onigiri at the convenience store. It was hard to decide when all he wanted to do was make up an excuse to get out of work early. He just hoped Bakugou and Akio were having a good day at home. Kirishima took out his phone, sending a quick text to Bakugou. How's it going? Did you two burn the house down yet? He continued with his work as he waited for a reply. Trying not to glance over at his phone every 5 seconds seemed almost impossible as he finished reading over a report from one of his sidekicks. Mr. Red Riot, sir? Kirishima looked up to find an intern at the door, nervously shifting from foot to foot. Hey, do you need something? Kirishima said with a smile. The kid was new to the agency, and they hadn't interacted much yet. I was told to come and get you? The intern said nervously. Kirishima couldn't help but feel as if something was off, but he didn't question it. A lot of the interns were nervous around pros at first, so he didn't question it as he got up from his desk and headed towards the door. Does Fatgum need me or something? I was told not to say anything. The intern was practically shaking. Kirishima raised an eyebrow. This seemed to have something more behind it. All right, where do they need me? By reception, the intern said nervously, hesitating before asking, Can I go back to what I was doing now? Yeah, sure, Kirishima told him. It was all it took for the intern to take off running in the direction of the agency's training room. Kirishima let out a sigh as he headed towards the reception desk, wondering what made the intern so nervous. The closer he got to the reception desk, the more people seemed to be rushing by, some whispering to each other or throwing him a curious glance. Something was definitely going on. As soon as he got to the front of the building, he saw a familiar head of blonde hair, and his smile only grew on his face. "What are you doing here?" Kirishima called out. Bakugou turned around grinning, Akio strapped to him in a baby carrier, letting out a delighted scream at the sight of Kirishima. "What, we can't stop by?" Bakugou questioned, holding out a bag with a wrapped bento to Kirishima. Kirishima blinked a couple of times before he let out a laugh. "You came to bring me lunch? You got to be careful, Cats. People may start thinking you're actually nice." "Just take it already." Bakugou huffed, but there was a bit of red on his cheeks. "Thanks, I appreciate it," Kirishima told him, taking the food, letting his hand linger just a bit too long against Bakugou's as he took the wrapped-up bento. His other hand extended, palm up, for Akio to slap at happily. "Do you want to stay and eat with me? We could go to the break room. Should be empty right now. It's late for lunch and all that." "Yeah, that works," Bakugou mumbled as he waited for Kirishima to lead the way. Kirishima looked around, noticing just how many eyes were on them, and maybe that would be a good enough excuse. He reached down and took Bakugou's hand in his, before pulling him along down one of the agency's hallway. "Did you scare one of the interns into going to get me?" Kirishima asked with a chuckle. "Don't know what you're talking about. I was perfectly civil. Right, Gremlin?" Bakugou said. Akio babbled at them, waving his hands around as he took in the new surroundings he was in. "That means yes," Bakugou assured Kirishima. Kirishima just laughed, his hand squeezing Bakugou's. "Sure, whatever you say, Cats." They got to the break room, which was luckily empty, and decided to sit at one of the tables towards the center of the room. Kirishima sat across from Bakugou and Akio, setting his lunch on the table. "What did you bring me for lunch?" he asked curiously as he started unpacking the bento. "Nothing much, just thought you would end up eating some." Bakugou lifted his hands, placing them over Akio's ears. "Shitty-ass food." He removed his hands from Akio's ears. "So may as well feed you and make sure you aren't poisoning yourself." Did you just cover Akio's ears so you could cuss freely?" "Yeah, it works. He doesn't hear it, and you can't get..." Bakugou covered Akio's ears once more. "Pissy." He uncovered them. "At me anymore." Kirishima shook his head. He was laughing, unable to do anything else. He tried to focus on his lunch, his mouth dropping open when he saw what was inside the bento. "Cats, this is... wow." The bento was filled to the brim with rice, yakiniku, gyoza, tamagoyaki, and kiriboshi daikon. The bento still felt hot, and it smelled amazing. "Thank you so much. You're so manly," Kirishima told Bakugou, not wasting another second before taking a bite and letting out a content sigh. Bakugou chuckled at his reaction. "That good?" Kirishima hummed in agreement and nodded, too busy eating to even answer. "At least we know he's happy. We brought him food," Bakugou said to Akio, who was busy hitting the table with a toy he had brought along. "I feel like this was a setup," Kirishima mumbled over a mouthful of food. Bakugou let out a laugh, unclipping the straps of the baby carrier and shifting Akio out of it and placing him on his lap. "Nah, you set yourself up." Bakugou gave him a devilish grin that almost made Kirishima's heart stop. "Everything okay with you staying home alone with Akio?" Kirishima said, trying to focus on his food. "Yeah, everything's fine. We were having fun. Decided to go for a walk, that's all." Bakugou shrugged, eyes on Akio, who was showing him his toy. "You decided to go for a walk?" "To the agency I work at, which is a good 1.5-hour walk, when it only takes 10 minutes to drive here." Kirishima raised an eyebrow at his best friend, who seemed to be avoiding his gaze. "You can't prove shit." Bakugou mumbled. I think I can, Kirishima chuckled. Also, you didn't cover his ears for that one. You. Hello, I heard we had a couple of visitors, Fatgum exclaimed as he walked into the room, the excitement clear on his face as he headed towards them.
Hey, Fat.
Bakugou greeted, still avoiding Kirishima's eyes. Akio stared wide-eyed at the approaching hero, but he wasn't crying, so Kirishima took that as a good sign. I hope you don't mind that they stopped by, Kirishima told Fatgum with a shy smile. Of course not, Fatgum exclaimed. Now I get to meet mini Kirishima sooner than I expected. Bakugou turned his body a bit more to have Akio facing Fatgum a bit more directly.
Here he is, the little gremlin himself.
Fatgum's smile only grew, while Akio's eyes grew wider in response. Even though Kirishima had grown in size a lot since his time as an intern, he still was short compared to Fatgum. At 6'5", he was only to his mentor's shoulder, barely. He really is something, Fatgum told him as he waved at Akio, who seemed to be analyzing the situation, a hand holding tightly onto Bakugou's shirt. You can see the resemblance to you two so clearly, Fatgum awed, especially the eyes.
Definitely A's eyes.
Bakugou agreed at the same time that Kirishima said, Cat's eyes for sure. They both turned to look at each other wide-eyed.
My eyes? Are you serious? They are clearly the same as yours,
Bakugou told Kirishima, voice full of exasperation. Cats? They are the same red as yours, Kirishima argued back, and the shape of them is yours too.
Are you?
Bakugou covered Akio's ears.
Fucking
uncovered them.
Blind? They are nothing like my eyes.
Is this a bad time to point out that you both have red eyes? Fatgum asked with a nervous laugh. He got 2 glares in response. I guess it is. So, can I hold him? He added, trying to change the subject quickly. He gets a bit nervous around new people, Kirishima explained as Bakugou shifted Akio around in order to hand him over to Fatgum. So don't get offended if he starts crying. With everything this little one has gone through, I don't blame him for being cautious. But we shouldn't talk about that here, Fatgum told them as he reached out for Akio. Akio looked at him with a bit of curiosity, but also cautiously as Bakugou handed him over. Fatgum let out a short laugh as Akio went to him, the baby looking even smaller against the gigantic man. Akio looked at Fatgum for a couple seconds, eyes wide, before turning to look at Bakugou and Kirishima and declaring, Da!
Oh, he likes you,
Bakugou declared as Akio turned around and started babbling happily at Fatgum. Fatgum grinned brightly. I have never been more glad that someone likes me. Time passes. They made their way to Fatgum's office after Kirishima was done eating. Fatgum refused to hand over Akio as they made their way back to his office, bouncing the boy around as he walked. Akio's delighted giggles echoed through the whole agency, making people turn to look at them with curiosity and small smiles. Bakugou couldn't help but feel the warmth in his heart at how Akio seemed to be having an easier time around new people. He was going to try to focus on the gremlin because that was the only thing keeping his heart from beating out of his chest. Kirishima was holding his hand again as they walked. It had to be for appearances, after all. They were supposed to keep up the charade that they were dating. That didn't stop him from feeling like he was about to burst into flames every time Kirishima squeezed his hand absent-mindedly. It was also fucking unfair that Kirishima was in his hero costume. How the redhead could walk around shirtless without realizing how distracting it was to others, to him, Bakugou would never know. Fatgum closed the door behind them, sitting behind his desk as Kirishima and Bakugou sat across from him. Akio sitting on the desk happily looking around and trying to grab anything within reach. Has the Hero Commission reached out to you two at all since that, what was her name, Sato? Since her visit? Any other contact? None, Kirishima said with a sigh, glad he shared the details of what happened with his boss and his mentor. We assumed that means we did good. HC doesn't waste any time when they're unhappy. Yeah, I think you two are out of the woods, at least for now. They'll come back when they need something or if anything goes wrong.
Well, that's just fucking great,
Bakugou mumbled. Kirishima elbowed him for it, but the blonde ignored him as he continued.
Have you looked at the info I sent to you about the other experiments they were running in that place?
I did, and it's very similar to a trigger drug, but it means to awaken quirks. It's dangerous, to say the least. They were desperate, and it shows. Wanting to use that on children? Infants, even, is just... Fandom let out a sigh, ruffling Akio's hair as a distraction from his own. You never know how an adult body would react to something like that, let alone someone so small. Were they able to finish it? Kirishima asked nervously, the follow-up question at the tip of his tongue. No, the raid happened in the middle of the experimentation. As far as the notes show, they weren't ready to test it out. Kirishima let out a breath of relief.
That's good at least, Bakugou voiced. Did you get the paperwork I sent you?
Paperwork? Kirishima asked with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, so that our agencies can work together on this case without worrying about HC coming after us due to all its regulations. Fandom explained. I already filled out our portion.
Thanks. I'm still waiting for Deku to finish his and also a couple of others,
Bakugou explained. When that is done, we can start planning a bit more, Fandom told them. From what I understand, the woman that you arrested...
The hag that tried to hurt our kid,
Bakugou corrected with venom in his voice.
She hasn't said anything?
Not yet, Kirishima admitted. We are thinking of asking Shinso for help on that one, but we are honestly hoping that we can find another way before we have to use mind control.
Mind control can be limited, after all,
Bakugou added. All right, good to know that you at least have a backup plan, Fandom told them with a nod. Aki was busying himself with a Fandom-shaped stress ball that had been on the desk, one of the ones Fandom gave out during media events.
Still lots more to do,
Bakugou mumbled. Time passes. Kirishima walked Bakugou and Akio out of the agency sometime later. He wanted to make up an excuse for them to stay together a bit longer, but he had actual work to do, and they were both rather big distractions for him in very different ways. Thanks again for the food, Kirishima told Bakugou as he stalled next to Bakugou's car. He didn't know why he felt low about them leaving. He would see them at home in a couple of hours, after all.
No problem, Red,
Bakugou replied as he closed the back door of the car, Akio already strapped into his car seat. The blonde shoved his hands in his pockets, standing awkwardly in front of his best friend.
We're being watched again,
he said, eyes glaring at the ground. Yeah, figured they would do that.
How much longer do you think it will last?
Kirishima wasn't sure how to answer. Part of him didn't want it to end. They could continue pretending to be a couple for their whole lives if it meant being able to touch Bakugou every now and then, hold his hand, and just maybe he took a step forward, getting so close he felt his breath hitch as Bakugou's eyes stared up at him. And God, he was beautiful. Let's give them something to talk about then, Kirishima whispered, leaning down, half scared that Bakugou would push him away. But he didn't. So Kirishima closed the distance between them. Their lips met ever so lightly. He felt Bakugou let out a gasp that Kirishima swallowed as he took advantage to deepen the kiss a bit more, one of his hands finding its way to Bakugou's waist and pulling him closer. Bakugou's hands found their way to Kirishima's chest, and the redhead hoped his best friend couldn't feel the way his heart was beating wildly. Kirishima pulled away, mostly because he needed air, but also because if he didn't stop himself, he would be unable to stop at all. Even then, he couldn't help leaning down for one more quick peck. Kirishima felt breathless, but even then he was able to smile. See you at home? Bakugou blinked at him, a small smile pulling at his lips, his cheeks flushed.
Yeah, I'll see you at home.
All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for this chapter. I gotta be honest, I just love it when they kiss, regardless of, why they are saying that they're doing it, because they both really want to, and I just love it. Oh, I just so much. I love them. All right, so I hope that you guys will join me for the next piece of Codominance by Curly Star 09. The next part that I'm going to do will be chapters 13 and 14. See you next time.